Hello and welcome to Super OK, where we try to do a decent enough job to entertain people with our opinions on video games. My name is Dale, and I'm joined here by two absolutely amazing human beings. The first is a voice who's a regular on the show, but you might not have heard him in a minute, and that's Gannon. Gannon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I didn't realize I was a regular on the show. I thought I was just this weird guy who sits in the background and sometimes shows up. I feel like I was like, I'm not the sitcom. I'm a reoccurring guest. I guess it's kind of a regular.
I'm going to go ahead and go with that meme of the little girl asking, like, ¿Por qué los dos? Why not both? Yeah, you could be a reoccurring character and also, like, be the weird guy.
That's true.
That's fine. It's totally fine. Also, last time I saw your beard, you had serious mountain man vibes, so you're taking that weird guy stuff serious.
I'm being like Bert from Two Bears podcast. I'm literally shirtless right now with like my chest hair out and my big old beard because I'm alone here because my family's up in Dallas tonight. So I'm just hanging out here shirtless doing a podcast. So just imagine, guys, if you are listening to this podcast, it's coming to you without a shirt on.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I want out of my podcasting experience. We also have here another guest in 2 weeks in a row. Combo. Dane is back. Dane, how are you?
Having a great week.
Wow. A whole week of greatness.
The whole week's been great. And I'm so glad that Gannon's here. That's really making it for me.
You know,
will you take your shirt off for me? I don't want to be the only one.
I don't have my camera on, but I'll do it. I'll do it for the spirit.
I didn't tell you whether or not I had a shirt on.
I just assumed you didn't.
All right, perfect.
After being a regular on this, I'm pretty sure you never wear one.
Yeah, I hate shirts. It's a known fact about me. Oh man, I'm actually wearing a Pac-Man themed shirt right now.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll take it. Anyway, this is speaking of Pac-Man, holy shit, what a segue. This is a podcast about video games. We never start with talking about video games unless it happens to be someone's highlight of the week. The highlight of the week is the thing that makes our week a little bit better, a little bit brighter, a little bit nicer to live in. And we always let our guests go first. Dane, what is your highlight of the week?
Mine is the release of Wuthering Waves. So opposite of Mullet Mad Jack that released last week, I'm also going to be playing a new action RPG. If you're familiar with Genshin, this is a very similar open world action RPG. It does have a gacha system. So I'm going to clown out on that for the foreseeable future.
Is it made by the same people?
It is not. It's a different development company. This is their first title, and it has the same like budget level of Genshin. So
okay.
Ooh. It's a lot of budget.
It's like a lot of monies.
How many polls are you going to do tonight?
Whatever they give me for free, because I'm not spending a dime on this game.
So proud of you.
That's good.
That's why you can play these games and I can't.
I just Googled it. It looks anime as fuck.
It is cool. Super anime.
What systems is it releasing on? It obviously PC, but what else?
As far as I know, mobile and PC.
Okay. Cool. So basically the same as Genshin initially, and then it'll probably come to all of the other stuff later. Oh, yep. They just announced a PS5 release date like a couple days ago.
Oh, yeah. Nice. This is anime as fuck.
Dude, it's so anime. Everyone's hair is either way too long or a non-standard color.
Oh, I should not have just looked at this.
Yeah, don't.
I'm just going to go back to believing that this is some weird sequel to Wuthering Heights.
You would like that too.
No, I won't.
Okay.
I hate literature.
All right. Fair enough. Oh, I was thinking of In the Heights.
Not In the Heights. Yeah. Come on, man. Very different things.
I mean, they're a little different, I guess.
I'm pretty sure they're pretty different.
All right, fair enough. I don't know. I might try Wuthering Waves. We'll see. Is it on Steam?
Epic.
I will not be trying Withering Waves. Cool. My highlight of the week, I've got two because they're tiny. They're both tiny. By the time this episode comes out, I will have already gone to the fighting game tournament that I am attending this weekend with my nephew, Obi-Wan Kenobi on Death Sticks in the Discord. And he is going to be competing, playing Guilty Gear Strive. But it's the first fighting game convention I've ever gone to, really the first video game convention I've ever gone to. So I'm super stoked about it. And to give him a little bit of good luck, I bought both of us some socks, some good luck socks for the event.
Mm-hmm.
And they're from a company called Crossover. And the weird thing about these socks is you buy them individually, you do not buy pairs of them.
What?
And the reason for that is so that way you can mix and match the socks. And that's because the socks have specific characters on them. And so I got myself a pair of socks with Sagat and E Honda, one Sagat sock and one E Honda sock.
Oh, amazing. Oh, these
That's
are super
awesome.
rare.
And then I got him a pair of I got him a Sagat and a Zangief sock. So hopefully they bring him much luck in his Guilty Gear tournament, playing with characters from a different fighting game on his shins. So I'm very excited about them. They're very cool. Also very, very silly. What do you mean they're super rare?
Oh, I thought they were from Super Rare. Super
No,
Rare's-
no.
I just saw them on that website, and I've bought in some of their T-shirts, their Street Fighter T-shirts before. So
Yeah, these are from Crossover. Weirdly enough, I found them in a mire. So like,
Way to
I
go,
don't know.
Meyer.
Yeah, seriously. And then the other highlight of my week is I have been playing the Ori series, and it is coming to an end. Despite some initial frustrations with some of the mechanics in the first game, that really hasn't been the case in the second game. The second game is so very good. Like, so very, very good. I highly recommend. I was inspired to play these by the Metroidvania episode that we did, and then Ganon played through them and told me that they were great, and I really should spend the time with them. And I am so very glad that I have. I am so very glad that I fought through the bullshit in the first game, because they really are something special. The story is gorgeous. The combat is amazing. The movement is flawless. If you haven't checked out the Ori series, I highly recommend doing so. I'm very, very close to finishing the second one, and I'm a little bit bummed out about it.
yeah, I mean, I've played through them so quickly that they feel like a fever dream, but they were also just so amazing. I couldn't stop playing them.
That
So
checks
I
out.
100% agree.
That definitely checks out. Plus, they're both on Game Pass, so if you have Game Pass, you can check them out. We talk about how Game Pass continues to be like one of the best values, and it's true. It's still true. Cool. Gannon, what is your highlight of the week?
So my first highlight of the week, like just yesterday, I think it was, or maybe 2 days ago, the Erd Tree trailer dropped. The time of the recording of this podcast, it's going to be like a week after the podcast comes out.
Mhm.
But the Shadow of the Erd Tree for Elden Ring DLC, the story trailer came out and just got me super hyped to play that game. Been starting up another run of it. I know I'm going to before it comes out, but I'm also doing my best to not play a game at launch, which I have failed at so much recently. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to do my best. Well, no promises, though. I've made these statements before, and then I get in the early access. So,
Dude, there's only a month until the DLC drops. I'm pretty sure you can wait a month to start up a new Elden Ring save.
It's true. I probably could.
That's also the
If
perfect
I was
amount of
not
time
me.
to do a run.
That's right. That's the thing. That makes it the perfect time, so I'd be ready to do the DLC.
But have you considered just playing Withering Waves or whatever it is and dropping all of your money into a well?
I already don't have a shirt. I need to keep my pants. Okay, like I'm gonna be in trouble if I play that game. It's not gonna be good. The other thing that I've been super excited for that just is at the time of the podcast dropping, Akuma just came out in Street Fighter 6. I'm excited to explore some Street Fighter 6. This is also the first big balance patch since the game came out. So we're going to see a bit of a meta shift, which is always exciting. And then, you know what? I just have to call it how great my friends are at Heroes of the Storm. We've been playing it, and man, those are just some fantastic players. They're so good at it. It makes me so happy.
Okay, now here's the thing. Gannon and several other people have been playing Heroes of the Storm in the Discord. And outside of Chase, all of them are pretty new to the game. Some of them, in fact, I believe are new to MOBAs in general.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's expected that they're going to lose a couple games, right? I get that. Also, though, they are terrible on top of that.
You don't need to sell me out like this, okay? I was giving them compliments.
Sure you were. You definitely didn't hear the sarcasm dripping out of your mouth.
I hope it doesn't. I don't have a shirt on.
You're stained with sarcasm now.
Oh no.
Yeah, they're bad on top of that. But it all joking aside, like, it still looks like everybody's having a good time. So
I am a good actor.
I said everybody. Well, okay, everybody but you is having a good time. You are not. I mean, you're a good actor when you're trying. You're not trying, but everyone else is still having fun with the game, and that's the important part of playing games, right?
It is.
So, yeah. Like,
I feel like I just keep watching my MMR fall. It just keeps going down, falling like a leaf.
yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of falling like a leaf, not that long ago, or if you're younger, a very long time ago, it was the fall of 1999, and it was a much simpler time. Napster had just come out, and Lars Ulrich of Metallica.
Wait,
Napster. Like pre-LimeWire.
Like I know, but it really sounded like you had a B in there, and I was like Napster. Like
Napster. Napster. Had just come out, and Lars Ulrich of Metallica was pissed off that everyone was downloading the song of that summer and every summer since, Smooth by Santana featuring Rob Thomas. Tony Hawk had just landed the first 900 in competition. Harry Potter had just come out in the US, and nobody was even worried about Y2K yet because it was still September. We weren't freaking out about that until like a couple months later. But in the world of video games, the PlayStation had already been out for around 4 years, and the N64 had been out for about 3. And because of this, Sega, who had released the failed Sega Saturn only 3 years earlier, decided that it was time to strike. They were determined not to repeat their previous mistakes, and so they ensured that they hyped up the new system and made sure that their distribution was in place well before launch, so that way they didn't run into any of the same problems they had with the Saturn. And on September 9th of 1999, that's 9999, which is pretty amazing, they released the Sega Dreamcast with a bunch of excitement and 19 banger launch titles. And it seemed at the time like Sega was poised to dominate the console market once more. However, less than 3 years later, the Sega Dreamcast was discontinued. So let's talk about the rise and the fall of this fabled system. An obvious first question: did you own a Dreamcast? And if so, what was your favorite game, and why was it Sonic Adventure and or Sonic Adventure 2?
So, I mean, Dane, why don't you go first? I'm going to let you go first as the guest.
Okay. So for me, I didn't have a Dreamcast when it was relevant. I wouldn't have a Dreamcast until many, many years later when I was working at a video game store and I was like really actively collecting video games. But I did play Sonic Adventure when it released to GameCube and PC like 2003. So I had to wait like a whole 4 years to play it. And I just have so much nostalgia for it. I have since played Sonic Adventure 2, but just the first one, for the choruses, for the music. I really enjoy it. The overworld music is like lives rent free in my brain. I love the casino level, and I think the pinball minigame I probably spent untold hours just playing that. And my favorite character from that game is Big the Cat, for all of the obvious reasons I probably don't need to state.
You're not an Amy. You don't go with Amy or what was no, that's the second one. The second one. What's the vampire chick?
Oh, Rouge the Bat.
Rouge the Bat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not your thing.
I wonder why that's the one you would bring up.
I don't know. I remember getting my Dreamcast and booting up the Sonic Adventure game and just sliding down that first hill in that opening city, jamming to the killer track. And man, I remember restarting my game multiple times because I wanted to do it perfectly and like get all the things. I loved that game, but my heart belongs to Sonic Adventure 2 between the two of them. I loved Shadow as a character. I loved how anime as fuck the Super Sonic, Super Shadow sequences were. Like, especially when they were in space. You know, like, man, it reminded me so much of Sonic Adventure or Sonic 2. Like at the end of Sonic 2 where you get to blast off into space. And I loved that whole experience of Sonic Adventure 2.
Nice. Dane, you not playing this on the Dreamcast means you missed out on my favorite part of Sonic Adventure, which was the fact that you could bring your cows, your little birds. You're not chocobos with you on the EMU. That was my favorite part about it. But I remember I was actually working the launch for the Dreamcast at KB Toys. It's my first ever console launch that I worked at, and it was so awesome. Everybody was super stoked. The launch titles were absolutely amazing. People were just like having a great time and very, very excited to see like Sega coming back into the limelight. People were jazzed about it. Speaking of the launch titles, my favorite launch title was Soul Calibur, but my actual favorite title on the system was Jet Grind Radio. I have talked about my unending and undying love for that game a bunch of times on the podcast. So I'm not going to go into it here, but easy first choice on the system. But I bought the system primarily so that I could play Soul Calibur at home because I was probably spending 20 to 30 bucks on it in the arcade a week. And so this saved me a whole lot of money.
That was an investment.
Yeah.
Yep. It's basically what I majored in at Oakland University with Soul Calibur. So I was playing that instead of going to class. I was making some choices. 1999 was a weird time. The pants were big. All right, moving on to the next question. The Dreamcast is often cited as a console stuck between generations. What do you feel are the coolest features of the Dreamcast? I'll go first on this one because I already talked about being able to carry around your KO on the VMU. I thought that was really awesome. We were a world that was just barely post Tamagotchi and Digimon and that sort of thing. And so being able to have like a different virtual pet that you could then load back into the game and have it like get better was really, really cool to me. But the thing that, in my opinion, was without question, the highlight of the Dreamcast was that it had a dedicated modem that it came with. And so even though earlier consoles had like messed around with the idea, this was the first time that I was able to play a video game online with a different person. And that's an awesome thing. And obviously way ahead of its time when you consider the fact that the modem it came with was a 56K modem. And to upgrade to a broadband modem, you had to later buy it for 60 bucks. Like, obviously ahead of its time, but also very, very cool. What do you guys think? What were the coolest features of the system?
So I'm going to go along with the VMU because this actually was a core mechanic for me with the game, with the Dreamcast, because my parents got me a Dreamcast, but they did not get me a VMU because they didn't understand. It was early, I was young, and I didn't really know what I needed. So like I played through Sonic Adventure without the ability to utilize like the little Chow Garden, and it kind of broke my heart. And then I just think like in going back and like looking at the things that it could do, like the fact that it had like a Wii U style like HUD where you could see something that was impacting in the game. So some of the big callouts I was looking at was like Resident Evil Code Veronica. You had some like health information there, and then like in the NFL 2K series, you actually could have secret plays that were on your VMU, so that your
Mm,
friend when you were playing with, they couldn't see it up on the screen.
yeah.
And that's just such a cool concept that like they were able to adopt and get their get onto the system. Although it, like I said, it broke my heart because I couldn't play. I never was able to save my poor play Fantasy Star Online for like the first year that I had it because I didn't realize that's what I needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. For the listeners who weren't around for the Dreamcast, the VMU stands for Virtual Memory Unit, and it was your memory card for the system. But it also had a screen on the front of it and like a little D-pad and two buttons. It was basically like the world's tiniest Game Boy. And some games let you do things with it, like while it was plugged into the controller, like Gannon talked about. And then there were actually some other games that let you download information to it and play little mini games on it, like while you were away from the Dreamcast. Absolutely insane technology. So, what about you, Dane? What do you think? What was the coolest feature for you?
For me, it was the online. I mean, the VMU is also really cool, and I didn't know that even like for sports titles, like you could have your plays on the VMU. That's really neat.
Yeah.
Not a lot of game systems make it where you can have like asymmetrical gameplay that like you can see, but other people can't see.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the online capabilities, just as like Sega was really invested into online at the time, even back for the Genesis in Japan, they had the Sega channel, so you could download full titles to your system. That was really neat. But since I didn't get to experience the Dreamcast when it came out, many years later, I got to still play online on PSO because an incredible group of like really talented and passionate people keep private servers going for it even to this day. Dead MMOs are kind of like one of the things that fascinate me, and I love playing a game that technically you shouldn't be able to play anymore because it's been dead and long gone. So I've played PSO online with the Dreamcast as recent as last year, and it still holds up and it's a very neat experience.
Yeah, I remember playing Fantasy Star Online, like basically when it first came out with my roommate at the time. And we like lived together. And so we were able to like play like locally with no problem. But then if either of us wanted to actually go online, it was like a I'm doing it, no, I'm doing it situation because we didn't have more than one phone line in the house. And so it was just a case where it was like, well, all right, Kevin's working at Hungry Howie's tonight. I guess I get to play Fantasy Star Online with people, you know? So,
It must have been a nice experience.
I mean,
I didn't.
he'd bring home a pizza. So, yeah, that was good.
Oh man, some good old Hungry Howie's.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was awesome. And I agree. Fantasy Star Online, the gameplay was amazing back then. I wish that they would bring that exact game, just like remaster it and put it out now with like the increased online capabilities that other systems have. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So we talked about some of our favorite games, but one of the things that makes the Dreamcast unique is that it was stacked with absolutely amazing fighting games. There was Soul Calibur, Power Stone, 1 and 2, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, Dead or Alive, Guilty Gear X. Now, obviously, I've talked about my love of Soul Calibur already, but did either of you have any experience with any of these games?
So Power Stone was a staple in my family. We would play it all the time. I had Power Stone. My cousins, like Harry Nevis and them, they had Power Stone too. They loved it. I mean, it's such a cool little arena fighter. I preferred Power Stone 1 because I liked the one-on-one battles, but I do recognize that Power Stone 2 is one of the best sequels of a game because of it took the one-on-one battle and made it into just a fantastic experience for a 4-player group. It would like the stages that changed and multi-stage fights, which was such a awesome change to like Smash Bros, where you play on you pick the stage and it was the same stage the whole time. Maybe there was some like external factors like the wind or like the lava would go up and down.
Yeah.
Like this, like you would completely change where you're going. Like I remember there's like the one on a ship, and then like the ship blows up and you like fight in the air on the way down, and then there's like waterfalls. It's just such a cool experience. We still bust it out now at family gatherings when we all get together.
Yeah. I never owned the power and either of the Power Stones, but I would regularly rent them, and it was always a great time. I absolutely loved the series. I thought the art style was really cool and unique for a fighter, especially when, like, you know, you think about Mortal Kombat Gold being one of the launch titles on the system in Soul Calibur, and they both went for like more realistic models, and so having a game that had that more like cartoony style was really appealing to me. What about you, Dane?
So this is going to be a bit of a self-report, but I have almost for my entire life been miserable at fighting games, mostly because I refuse to just try and understand them. So I have very distinct memories of Soul Calibur being played at parties when I was a kid and just avoiding, like, everyone's like, hey, Dane, you want to play? And I'm like, no, let me know if you play Quake. Like, no, like I'm not going to play Soul Calibur in front of a bunch of girls and get my ass handed to me.
A fair point.
I know Soul Calibur was the defining dating meta of that time.
That's what I was just about to say. I know many women who turned down someone because they could not combo with Mitsurugi. Like, so many people. Ridiculous. So far we've talked a ton about first party titles, but there were over 600 total titles released for the Dreamcast during its short lifetime. So with that in mind, are there any standouts in the third party space that we remember fondly?
Mm-hmm. Gannon, you sound like you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I mean, for me, I've talked about it on the podcast before how much time I love and how much I love Jedi Power Battles and co-op hours that I've spent playing that game. Other ones that I really enjoyed, Dave Mira Freestyle BMX. It was a fun little like Tony Hawk version of with bikes. I remember playing that a lot. I did have Tony Hawk on the Dreamcast as well too. That was the system I owned it on. But those are some big ones for me, because the other ones were all first party stuff. Because I think about like Crazy Taxi and other games like that. So
yeah. Yep. Dane, what do you got?
Two of mine are, so I love 3D platformers, definitely one of my favorite genres. And I have a lot of fondness for early 3D platformers. And Hasbro at the time was rebooting like a bunch of old franchises. I don't know if you guys remember, like they did a 3D Centipede title, they did a 3D Breakout title, and they also did two Frogger titles, Frogger and then Frogger Swampy's Revenge. And Dreamcast had the best versions of those by far. And they had great soundtracks. They were interesting because like a lot of 3D platformers were dealing with the newness of motion in 3D and like how do you balance that, and some games didn't do it so well, but Frogger just kind of stuck to what it knew and just did 2D gameplay within a 3D space. The first game is super simple because it's just collecting the frogs like you normally would, but it's set up like Mario 64 where the level kind of expands as you like keep finding more frogs. And then the second game actually had like a linear story mode and then a bunch of arcade content. So super neat series. And yeah, all of the Hasbro reboots at that time were all amazing on the Dreamcast.
I'm going to agree with you, with the exception of Q*bert.
That might be the one I didn't play. Yeah,
because I played Q*bert, and it was rough, man. It was, I rented it, and it was one of those games where it has an isometric viewpoint. And I remember playing it on the NES and always being pissed off because like you could only move up, left, right, and down. But Q*bert, it was like up, left, up, right, down, left, down, right. And so you would press up and he would not go the way you want him to, without question, every single time. And I was like, fucking sweet. Hubert is out on the Dreamcast, or the Dreamcast has an analog stick. I will finally be able to control Hubert and get past the first level. Nope. They made that shit only recognize the cardinal directions again for no good goddamn reason. And so I'm just like launching Hubert into the fucking abyss, like mad out of my mind that I wasted $3 on a fucking game rental. Like, oh, Hubert, you piece of shit. So yeah, I remember the Frogger game was good, but man, Hubert sucked my butthole. It
Is
was
that why
terrible.
he was cursing all the time? Is because he was just talking to you?
I mean,
He's like, fuck your directional, your omnidirectional.
I mean, honestly, they could have recorded how often I swear and like given that to Hubert, like because I fucking hated that game. But some games that I loved, on the other hand, Unreal Tournament on the Dreamcast was so unbelievably good. It was so fast and so twitchy, and I loved it so much. It was always a favorite of mine. At the time, like I mentioned, I had a roommate. We would constantly have like just throngs of humans over at our house. And so we would very frequently end up playing Worms World Party. And it was the type of house where it was like we'd go to work and then come back, and our friends had like broken into our house because we weren't there yet, you know? And so, like, there were times where I would just walk in and it'd be like, hi, 3 people who don't live here and no one who does live here, and they're just rocking Worms World Party. So that was always awesome. And then being able to play NFL Blitz not in the arcade was a revelation. I absolutely loved that game. I'm a big fan of like sports games that go over the top and let you do shit that you can't do in real sports. And so I loved NFL Blitz in the arcade, and I absolutely loved playing it on the Dreamcast. It was great. And that leads directly into my next question, because obviously, when you look at the Dreamcast lineup, there's a huge gap in what you see on every other system, and that's anything by EA Sports. They didn't put out a single game on the Dreamcast, and that's because at the time when the Dreamcast was out, Sega still owned the 2K series, and so they were releasing their own 2K games, like Sega 2K Football, Sega 2K Basketball, that sort of thing, right? And so do you guys have any favorite sports titles from the Dreamcast era? And I'll go first because I already talked about NFL Blitz. And the only other one that I really got into on the Dreamcast was Ready to Rumble, which was a boxing game. I don't know if that counts because it wasn't like a boxing sim. You know, it wasn't like the later EA games where it's like, oh, each thumbstick like controls a glove and you're like blocking it. It was like way more cartoony. Characters had special moves. So I'm not sure if that counts as a sports game or as a fighting game. But either way, those were really the only 2 that I played on the Dreamcast. What about you guys?
For me, it's easy because I only played a few. One of them was AAA 2000, a friend had growing up. And of course, AAA 2000, because that had Sammy Sosa. And I had to go with Cubs representation.
Oh, yeah.
You were like, we need as many steroids as possible on this cover.
All of them. I mean, it was an exciting time. Even though roids were behind it, the home run competition between McGuire and Sosa was a fun time to watch baseball. I didn't know any better.
Maybe as a Cubs fan. If as a Tigers fan, it wasn't very fun.
Okay, I could see that.
It was a bad time for us at that point. I didn't play the baseball game. My baseball game of choice was Ken Griffey's on the N64.
Such a good game.
I love the Ken Griffey series on 64. I did love the Blitz 2001. I had that one on
so good
on my Dreamcast. It was I think it's 514 if I'm remembering correctly. Is Infinite Turbo still? And I think it's like 121. I don't remember his tournament mode. I just remember like all those codes you'd put at the beginning. The Midway had some freaking amazing games there.
Yep.
I think I owned an NHL 2K game at one point, and I definitely owned some of the 2K basketball series later in life, but I don't remember them on the Dreamcast. I talked about Dave Mirra, BMX, if that counts or not. Tony Hawk as well too. Those are great games. I remember picking up Virtua Tennis and being like, "This isn't Mario Tennis. What have I done with my life?" And promptly returning that
Yeah.
shortly after.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember I played virtual tennis in a Sears, like at one of the like video game kiosks, and I was like, "Man, I am not buying this shit. This is garbage." But to your point, I also played Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 on the Dreamcast, and it was pretty good. But I'm not gonna lie, that's one of the games where the PS2 version of it was far superior. The controls were just so much tighter. There was like a looseness to the Dreamcast analog stick that made it work really well for like Sonic and Crazy Taxi and that sort of shit. And people who were not Sega could not figure out how to like get the tightness good enough on that analog stick for controlling like really precise controls, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe that was a me problem. Maybe it was a my controller problem, but
so Dreamcast had the analog stick was a different type of analog stick, if I remember correctly. It used magnets, I think, rather than triggers. A Hall effect joystick, if I remember correctly. I'm thinking about like back to like when I started looking into like playing fighters recently and like learning a lot about what controller I wanted to get, and I think it used Hall effect for its analog stick rather than like the little like traditional triggers that we have on ours.
Which makes it like super frustrating that developers couldn't figure out movement at the time, because that's a really good analog stick.
Well, the problem is that, I mean, giving away some of my stuff for later, but it only had one analog stick, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right. Yep.
it had it on the left side, even though it came out after the PlayStation. And once we got dual stick, and especially once the Xbox came out and like truly defined twin stick for Halo, like it was really hard to come back from that, I think. And it was a pretty clunky controller too. It was pretty big.
It was the size of a small dinner plate. It was pretty crazy. And I just looked it up. You're right. It uses Hall effect. So it's using magnets instead of a potentiometer. And the stick was actually on like one large spring. So there was no way for it to get loose over time as well. So like, I guess the quality of it was really high, but for whatever reason, man, it just felt real loose on some of these games. But here's the thing, it didn't feel like that in Jet Grind Radio, so maybe it was just like a Tony Hawk issue.
Yeah, it was like coded for the potentiometer and like the fight, like the dead zones and stuff that are there.
Yeah, that would make sense. So I mean, you kind of brought this up here, but we obviously all remember the Dreamcast fondly. I feel like this is going to be a vast majority of the episode here. So let's get into it. What do we believe are the largest factors in what killed the Dreamcast?
I feel like we need a moment of silence for the Dreamcast right now, because it was just such a victim of bad timing. And I talked about the controller, that like it was such a great controller until it wasn't, because of other things right after it, right? And the PlayStation, the DualShock 1 was great, DualShock 1 was PS1, right? But the DualShock 2 for the PS2 was just, it's still one of the best controllers of all time. Like it's so hard to compete with that. Definitely a bummer there. I think another thing that was huge when we talk about it being in a weird space is it didn't use DVDs, which like when I think about like the PS2 and then the PS3 and Xbox and like the things that kind of killed it off, was you were able to have a home entertainment system and like watch stuff on it. Which made it easier for families to purchase it. It was easier to convince mom and dad, at least for me, like I was at the time, to convince them to get an Xbox, because like we could watch movies on it, we could watch DVDs on it. Like I think about that a lot when in comparison to like the Dreamcast. It never had that DVD support. So, and when games got bigger, it couldn't support bigger games because it didn't have the space.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I remember thinking how cool it was that you could put a like audio CD in and play it in both the PlayStation and the Dreamcast, and like that was awesome. But then the PS2 came out and it had a DVD player in it, and this was at a time when like the PlayStation 2 came out, it was $300. A DVD player was like $250. And so it's like, obviously you're going to buy the thing that is a DVD player and also can play all of your old PS1 games, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that backwards compatibility piece definitely put a ceiling on the possibility of the Dreamcast, especially when you take into account the fact that the PlayStation had absolutely dominated the like generation right before this. I say generation right before, but it was only 4 years prior to the release of the Dreamcast that the PlayStation came out. So it wasn't even like it was like, oh no, people are really clamoring for new hardware, you know? Obviously, everything looked so much better on the Dreamcast, but I really feel like Sega thought getting to the market early would give them a much greater advantage than it did. And that backwards compatibility that we talked about was important. Nintendo releasing some absolutely insanely good first party GameCube games that you could not play elsewhere were like that was huge. Like, yes, Sega had a bunch of great first party games, but a bunch of those first party games were also available in the arcade, right? When you think about like Crazy Taxi, like you can play that in the arcade. I want to play Crazy Taxi, I can go pay $3 and play it for like 15 minutes and be done with it. You know, I don't have to buy the system to play that game. Whereas if you want to play Mario Sunshine, you have to buy a GameCube, right? And so all of those things put together, I think, kind of just put the nail in the coffin for this system. And that's not even taking into account like any of the stuff internally at Sega, you know?
I like how Gannon kind of framed the Dreamcast as like a victim, right? Like it didn't do so much wrong as like stuff happened around it. Like the Saturn was just not a good like lifespan for a console. Like you need to make money on consoles, so you need to make games, and those games need to release, and you can't do that in like 3.5 years. There's just not enough room, and they were completely fragmented because they had that was the second disc-based console because they technically already had the Sega CD.
Yeah, they had the Sega CD.
So, like, how do you do backwards compatibility, right? Like, what system do you make it compatible with? So it just didn't make sense. And like Gannon, you said I think the disc size, everything went to DVDs, and I think Dreamcast discs were like 1 gig, so not nearly enough. And with Microsoft, coming into town with the Xbox, I don't think there was enough room in the industry for like that much. Like it definitely kind of got squeezed out naturally by just everyone else being very successful at the time.
Yeah. And I mean, you talk about the failure of the Saturn. Like, one of the other things that's important to note is the Dreamcast was chugging along. Like, they put out 600 games in 3 years for this system. Now, obviously, it wasn't all Sega, but like Sega released great game after great game after great game, and we'll have a chance in a moment to call those out. But the other thing to keep in mind is they didn't discontinue the Dreamcast until Sega had a change in leadership. And so those original leaders being kind of like forced out due to some of the failures of the Saturn, due to some of the late hardware decisions of the Genesis that didn't go so well. I think we all remember the 32X, and due to what was seen as them basically being in last place on the Dreamcast in everywhere except in Japan, where they were beating the Xbox, right? but third out of fourth is still not great. So obviously the leadership left, and with them they had new leaders who had to come in and A, get the stink of failure off of them, but B, turn a profit pretty quickly so that way they weren't replaced by the board of directors. And so that's when they decided, like, hey, we have all these amazing first party titles and no one is buying our system. And so what we're going to do is just release all of these titles on the systems that people have already purchased. And they were hugely successful in doing so. Mm-hmm. And that's the wildest part to me, is like, I look at all of these games that came out originally on the Dreamcast, and it was wild to see, like, oh yeah, this game was on the Dreamcast, and then like 2 years later, it was out on the GameCube or on the PlayStation 2, right? And like, that's just a wild thing to see, except for the fact that we are currently kind of watching it happen again with Xbox, where Xbox is really far behind in sales. And so they have started porting some of their first party titles over to other consoles. And so the parallels between Dreamcast 24 years ago and where Xbox is right now are really, really interesting to me.
Kind of comes full circle.
I never thought about it like comparing it that way, because I wonder if Sega was able to have capitalized on their online like infrastructure and created like a streaming service back in the day, if they could have survived as a developer. I mean, they're trying to make a comeback now. We just had the big like thing that they showed at the Game Awards, and I think we were all super hyped to see Sega like trying to throw its foot back out there, like as a big developer.
Yep.
I mean, they've thrown out a few like kind of lackluster Sonic games recently, but like that they had that whole like kind of Sega's coming back. I think they sent stuff out to some content creators as well too, and I'm interested to see where they go and if they can capitalize on that hype of bringing them back. I mean, I never really thought about it though, that they're like potential that Xbox is doing kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it's doing almost the same thing, just without discontinuing the Xbox hardware, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just wild to think about. It's funny because you called out like they had some bad Sonic games, and they did have some bad Sonic games. But in my opinion, like Sonic Mania was obviously amazing. There was a return to form for the 2D Sonic. And then everybody that I know who played Sonic Frontiers, I personally didn't because I had been burned by so many 3D Sonics in the past, but everybody else really seemed to like it. Dane is playing the Sonic game on mobile, Sonic Dream Team. Is that it?
Yeah, Sonic Dream Team. Mm-hmm.
And you're loving that, right?
It is a great game. I mean, I also played what was it, Sonic Superstars at the end of last year, which I also thought was really good. I think maybe Sega is in a good spot right now to kind of like bring stuff back, because Sonic is, I mean, if not even games, I think 2 successful shows, Sonic Prime and the Knuckles show, and 2 movies with a third on the way. Sonic's in a good place.
Yeah, they're using that capital to invest back into some of their big things, which is cool.
That's good. I think that's great. I would love to see Sega make a resurgence and like really bring out some absolutely top tier games like they had back in the day. So yeah, speaking of top tier games that they had back in the day, we have spent this entire episode gushing about the game library, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface. So are there any other games that you want to call out that we haven't yet mentioned?
Ooh, I mean, I've mentioned it in passing. Crazy Taxi obviously is such a huge. It was an awesome game. You said it was in the arcades, but to be able to play it at home was awesome.
Yep.
Jet Set Radio. You talked about that. Loved that one a ton. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, another arcade hit. I played it. I don't know if it was on the other stuff. I do remember it being on my Dreamcast. I played it on the Dreamcast first for me. I don't know. Yeah, it looks like it was brought to a bunch of other stuff later. Actually, but looking at the Metacritic, like it was higher scored on the Dreamcast than any other system.
Yep.
Funny.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty consistent. It's pretty wild. So yeah, all good call outs. I honestly, the fact that we didn't mention Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in the fighting game section, any of us, is a sin, because that game was amazing. It was really, really hard to find in the US. I could not get my hands on a copy of it, but I played it a ton in the arcade. And
Wonder
so
if
I
we still
absolutely
have a
love it.
copy.
I mean,
I should check that out.
yeah, you definitely should, because I think it fetches a pretty penny. One of the things I wanted to call out about the Dreamcast is how willing they were to take chances and make some absolutely batshit wild games. You know, we talked a little bit about Shenmue earlier, and there was no other game that was like Shenmue when Shenmue came out. But also, like, Seaman came out for this game, and it was a game where you raised like a little fish guy with a human face, and it came with a microphone attachment that you plugged into the controller, and you could talk to your little fish man. And it's like, what even is this? Also, I love it.
That was Leonard Nimoy, right? That voiced the fish, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know, and I'm not even sure how to Google it with safe search off.
I'm
So,
pretty sure it is.
yeah. But like, what a wild concept for a game. This was also, if I remember correctly, the first console that released a fishing rod controller specifically for it. And like, the fishing games on this system fucking ruled. Like, Sega Bass Fishing was absolutely amazing, in part because you had a fishing rod that you were like actually holding. And if you don't think that influenced the Wii later on, like, you're out of your mind, man. It was so cool.
New Capcom versus SNK was also there. That's a pretty good fighting game.
Yep.
Just like trolling through and making sure I don't miss anything.
Yeah. I mean, House of the Dead 2 was so good. It had Rayman on it. It had Ikaruga, which I remember, like, at the time was absolutely mind blowing. That it's like, wait, there's like a top down scrolling shoot 'em up that's like dick kicking hard that everybody says is amazing. You know, so just some really, really solid games on the system. Dane, you got any others you want to call out?
I was just thinking about like all the arcade games. Like Sega's had such a like prominent role in like the arcade space, and even until the Dreamcast, the home console is like a natural extension of it. And I love like old school like arcade racers that were like point to point and usually had like really big like just tracks with like tons of special effects and like neat things happening. So I loved playing like the crap out of like Hydro Thunder and like Daytona USA. And the Dreamcast ports are really good for those.
Yeah. Awesome call out. Dude, I almost forgot about Gauntlet on this system. Like, it played so good. Yeah, it was Gauntlet Legends. It was so good. There's like a million different great games for it. Also, this was the first system where I saw anybody have a keyboard for it. My roommate, the one who we talked about playing Phantasy Star Online with, he bought this insane looking controller that had the two halves of the Dreamcast on either side of it, and then a keyboard in the fucking middle. And it looked like something made by like Dr. Moreau or whatever, because it did not look like it should exist, but it was so cool. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, big fan of this system. Big fan of the games. Any others that we need to talk about? Great. Perfect. In that case, let's move on to our sponsored question. This question is sponsored by Ultima Online. I couldn't remember the name of it. Dane talked about dead MMOs, and Ultima Online is like, hey, I'm here. I want to be talked about. In the case of Ultima Online, they want to know, the Dreamcast killed Sega as a hardware manufacturer. Which company would you like to launch a failed video game console? What games would be on it? And how quickly would it spiral into oblivion?
Ooh. Ooh. So I'm gonna go first because I'm gonna be using this company soon, and I hate that I'm going to be. I wish that United Airlines was going to make a flight sim console that was so amazing I could try it once because I do love flight sims. But then I wanted to crash and burn not just the plane but the entire system and the company because I hate them so much. But they keep failing and they keep giving me miles and vouchers, and so I keep going back. And the only way that I'm going to break this cycle is if the game comes or the console comes up, the company tanks, and I never have to use them again. It's the only way I'm going to break the cycle because every single time I fly, I get miles because they mess up or they give me vouchers for money, and I'm like, okay, well, I go to Michigan again for free.
That's amazing. Thank you to United Airlines for sponsoring Ganon coming to my state for free. Also, quit fucking them around, guys.
Burn.
Dane, what do you got?
Okay, so stick with me. Panasonic, out of nowhere, releases the 4DO, the successor to the 3DO, and they use exactly the same fiscal model as that system, which was that they made money on the systems, but they didn't have like any royalty fees for the game, so like anybody could publish. Which, now that I'm saying it, might work in an indie environment. I don't know. The world is a different place now. But yeah, no, we get Gex comes back. In this alternate universe, they buy out Naughty Dog. So Naughty Dog can make a sequel to one of the worst fighting games ever, Way of the Warrior. And within a year, they announced the closure of the games division.
Well, I'm concerned because once we get to the 4DO, like, do they have control over time?
That's too much power for Panasonic, I think.
I'm concerned now. Like, they may only last a year, but does the world only last a year? Does the universe only last a year because they create some sort of paradox?
Nintendo, I've come to bargain. Fucking such a dumb joke. I love it. All right. I want my console to come out from Soldier Boy. I'm kidding. I do kind of wish that the KFC console from Cooler Master was real. I don't care about Cooler Master enough to care whether or not they go out of business from this. But that console had some good ideas. A hot swappable GPU port is like great because that means that the console is basically like one of those Steam machines. Do you remember those? But where it's like you can just upgrade just the graphics card with no problem. I think that that's awesome. It also had a chicken warming slot in there to make use of all of the heat that was rolling around inside the console, which otherwise is wasted. So that's great. And the beautiful part about this is if they were to actually release this April Fool's Day joke, it would be discontinued 3 weeks prior to being released due to the grease fires that were caused in reviewers' houses from all of the chicken catching on fire from these damn things. But it's great because it would just use Steam. So it can just hook into that existing architecture, but warm some chicken. So that's what I want.
You said it was an April Fool's joke, but did they have a working model of that?
No. I wish they did.
Man.
I mean, I'm just concerned what happens to all the mashed potatoes and gravy at KFC. I don't want them to go out of business. I'm ready to fight you for those mashed potatoes and gravy.
It wasn't produced by KFC.
Okay.
It was produced by Cooler Master.
Okay.
And they had licensed the use of KFC's name for
it.
Right? Because we both know KFC has released some great games recently.
Mm-hmm. They got fantastic. The finger-licking dating sim where you date or whatever. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, you can date Colonel Sanders or whatever.
Yes. Top tier.
Yeah. So the website says that you can enjoy your favorite games in finger-clicking good 4K quality on supported devices. So
that's awesome.
It's perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. It also says that it'll give a fluid high frame rate gameplay at up to 240 FPS for all games, and all is in capital letters.
Every game, 200.
Every game. It's perfect. You understand why I want it to be real.
Yeah. Well, I know, but I just Then if we don't want them to fail, Dale, we want them to succeed.
Okay,
Just Cooler Master, though. It's okay.
It's just Cooler Master. You
don't
can get
need
your
them.
fans from somebody else, man.
I mean, I already do. I'm a Corsair fan over here.
There you go. Right? A Corsair fan.
fan. You know what I'm not a fan of?
What?
Daniel.
Why?
Fuck you, Dan.
You know what? Checks out. Dane, you got anything to say about that?
No. It's 10 out of 10.
Perfect. I thought you were going to taunt him for being on another episode before him.
I mean,
he was supposed to be on an episode recently.
Yeah.
He backed out.
Yeah.
He did.
Make sure you guys tag Oren saying, "Why are you letting your family get sick, you jerk?"
How dare you? All right. Anybody got anything else to say about the Dreamcast?
No.
R.I.P.
Dude,
Yeah.
rip to a real one.
Rip the dream.
If you're drinking anything, pour one out for the realist Dreamcast. Cool. Outside of that, Dane, why don't you tell the people where you can be found and if you've got anything to plug?
Brain of Dane on Discord. I'll be playing Wuthering Waves for the foreseeable future, so come watch.
Cool.
I'll be scraping at the bottom of the ELO barrel in HOTS. You can find me there as Limousine. But I'll be in the Discord doing it Skankface.
Nice. I am a 20-sided ninja both in the Discord where I will not be playing HOTS because you can't play it on a Steam Deck. I don't know. Rampage, or well, not Rampage, Gigantic Rampage Edition just went on sale, and that looks like a fun MOBA that I can play on Steam. So I might buy that. I don't know. And you can also find me on Blue Sky. It's a great place. Also, if you are a Patreon, thank you again immensely for your support. We really appreciate you. And if you are not a Patreon member, but you're like, hey, these guys are cool, I would like to support them. Share this episode with your friends and family who also love Power Stone. Or I don't know, post a review or leave a comment on the YouTube channel. Oh, by the way, we got our YouTube handle finally. It's youtube.com/@superok. The at is a at symbol. Yeah, we crossed the threshold. We got a custom handle. So yeah, that's pretty exciting stuff. Yeah, I think that's about it. Say goodbye, everybody.
If you're listening, thanks for listening.
Oh yeah.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.